Hey everybody, welcome to the Ostomy Guy podcast. I'm your host, Austin. Today, we get to visit with Paul Wischmeyer. Paul is 50 years old. He's had an ostomy. This is his second time around with it. He has a pretty interesting story. He's had stomach problems since he was a kid. He's a physician now, a professor. He speaks on not only his practice, but also on ostomy and ostomy awareness and IBD awareness. So I'm looking forward to hearing his story and visiting a little bit with him about kind of how, I want to see if I can't get a feel from him about how our doctors can be wrong sometimes. And even as a physician, if he in his own life has experienced that, and it's not a negative, it's just an awareness thing, because so many of us deal with different issues and our illnesses are so unique. So I kind of want to see if I can't get into his brain a little bit on that side of things. So we'll see where it goes. Thank you very much for coming on, Paul. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to getting to know you a little bit, hearing a little bit about your story, but I also I want to, throughout our conversation, because you've had IBD, colitis since you were a kid, you've been, and you're 50 years old. So I'm 38, and there's been a giant transition, a evolution in the medical research and information we have on these issues since I was diagnosed even in 1992. So I want to trigger a thought as we go about how, because there's so many patients who we have doctors and physicians and people in our lives who can sometimes speak in absolutes about things we don't have cures for, things that we really, you know what, these drugs, these treatments, they might have a solution for you, but they might not. And they also have side effects that you might not get help by the drug, and you might accumulate a side effect in the meantime. And so many of us struggle emotionally with the reality of the fact that we're searching for a cure, but you know, there's a lot of unknowns along the way, and we're all really in charge of being the CEO of our own health. And so no matter who our doctors are, even if they're close friends of the family, we have a responsibility because of so many unknowns and the uniqueness of the human body and our condition to take that role and not put so much pressure on our medical professionals, yes, on one hand, but also on ourselves to think that our problems are going to go away tomorrow because we take this or we do that, and more of an understanding of learning to manage our illness as we go forward. So I might bring up something or ask you a question as we go, just to kind of think back or think into that frame of mind for our listeners today, if you would, if that's all right.
Sure. No, that's
all right.
Great.
Okay. So I like to start out with a day in the life of. So tell me what a normal day with you is like, from sun up to sundown, the kind of things you get in, from hobbies to hanging out with family or friends, your work, how active you are or not active, things you're able to now do as a management in your life to stay active and healthy with an ostomy and with ulcerative colitis and IBD.
Sure. So an average day, my wife and I typically get up about 6:30, except for the weeks that I'm in the ICU working. I work in a surgical and trauma ICU that recently has become a COVID ICU at times. We're one of the COVID ICUs as well at Duke University Hospital, the main hospital. Those weeks are earlier. We do 7 days we get up about 5:30 a.m. those weeks and work till about 6 or 6:30 at night. But that's only 8 or 10 weeks a year. And then occasionally I'm on call overnight, where I might spend between 1 and 3 nights in a row working overnight from like 5 p.m. to 8 a.m.
Okay.
Which has its unique challenges, I will say, for someone with an ostomy and someone who doesn't have a lot of gut, and staying hydrated and balancing medications and all those things, which may be interesting to talk about.
Yes. Can I ask you a question about, so like I get up at 5:30 every day, but it's not because I got to get to work or something. It's because that's usually the hardest time of the day for me, when my system's kind of getting moving and I start having the most bowels and that kind of stuff in the mornings.
Yep.
And so that's my time at home. How does that affect you? Like, I've learned I intermittent fast almost so that I can control that. And that's the time I can control and take care of those issues. But how do you manage that? And is that an issue?
I have to admit, so, I've had an ostomy now, God, 30 years.
Yeah.
I don't, I say it now, and when it annoys me, it's super annoying. My wife would say otherwise, but I don't really notice my ostomy too much, honestly, most days.
Yeah.
At this point, it's just, I don't know. I can't remember what it's like not to have one. Yeah. And so it's just sort of a routine part of my life that most days, I don't notice. And so I don't do too much to plan around it. I mean, I drink a lot of Gatorade Zero to stay hydrated, which, most people could drink water and do that. But we with ostomies, especially ileostomies, and shorter, we can't drink water, and we shouldn't, not in significant amounts, because it actually disturbs our electrolytes and it's, from a salt perspective, dehydrates us. And so I probably drink different things. I take a lot of supplements early in the morning and at night before I go to bed, probably 17-ish different things to keep myself healthy and fit and ready for the next time. Inevitably, many of us know, inevitably I'll have surgery again, like many of us do, for a bowel obstruction or some other complication. And so there's a lot of things I do knowing that tomorrow might be the day I get a bowel obstruction and end up back in the operating room. And then the other supplements I take really are related to athletics and sort of working out performance and muscle mass and things like that. So our mornings start with, we eat a really good breakfast. I have a protein shake every day with soy milk. I use a cherry, berries, and kale mix. So I get, that's where I get my greens. I juice or blenderize with a bullet my vegetables and fruits, and then some whey protein powder and a little honey in there. And then I'll eat some sort of gluten-free or power grain waffles to slow things down. So if I just drink protein shakes, like you can imagine, it runs through me pretty quick. So I guess I am compensating for it. Like you said, it's automatic now. And then
it's a total habit, lifestyle for you.
Yeah, I take a lot of loperamide because I have about 160 centimeters, maybe a little less, of small bowel. Okay. If I didn't take Imodium, I take 10 milligrams or 5 pills twice a day, which is way beyond the average dose that most people would take that had colons, or sort of normal people would take. But I take that every day. And if I didn't, I would need IV fluids or TPN, because I would never be able to keep up with my losses. So some of those things I take, I'm very religious about. Obviously, I can't miss the timing on my loperamide. I have to take it in the morning. I have to take it at night. It's got a really long effect time or half-life. And so, but you want to time it out. And so every morning and every night, there's this ritual of taking the different supplements and then the Imodium to keep that going. And then after that, we typically would go to work, but the days I'm doing research or working on other teaching or education things for my medical work, I do it at home, right where we're sitting right now, writing papers, writing grants. That we do at home. And then if I'm in the hospital, in the ICU, if I'm in the hospital taking care of the nutrition service, I would go to the hospital like I did this morning. I was seeing TPN patients, some of whom have short bowel or have fistulas. It's interesting to take care of people who have the same illnesses you've had. Some days it's satisfying. Some days it's traumatic because it reminds you of where you've been or where you could be moments, months, weeks later.
Yeah. Have you had any situations where someone was just broken by what they were dealing with, and you had a really cool opportunity to be an advocate right there for them? And can you recall it? Is it something you could share or no?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it actually, I guess, in a satisfying way, and I often probably don't reflect on it as much as I could. I don't get asked this question very much by someone who understands it like you do. Yeah. It happens a lot. It happened today. I was talking to someone who was going to go on a TPN and going to be on it a while, and was actually going to go home on it, and was preparing for a big abdominal surgery, and we had a really good conversation about her fears and concerns. And I actually said, it's scary to think about this, but I've done this, and I was on it for almost a year, IV nutrition, and it saved my life. And she was going to get an IV line, and I was showing her. I was like, oh, it's I have a scar right here. from the line I had for a very long time. And I said, this is where they're going to put it. And it's going to be really hard at first, but it's going to get better. And, I think I have that experience more with people with new ostomies, honestly, than I do even on my TPN. TPN is something most people aren't on that long. Some people are on it their whole lives, but most people aren't. But everybody who gets a new ostomy is terrified and thinks their life's over for the most part that I meet.
Right.
And that may be the most satisfying some days part of my job, is that I see a lot of those patients for nutrition and other ICU and surgical needs. And once in a while, I don't do it every time, of course, but once in a while when they really seem down, I say, look, I have an ostomy too, and I show them.
Yeah.
They look at me and they're like, but you don't look sick.
Yeah, right.
And I said,
right.
Not anymore, I don't. And I said, that's the amazing thing, is that this ostomy is going to change your life for the better.
Yeah.
Do anything, there's nothing you can't do in an ostomy that you couldn't do before. And there's going to be a million things you can do now because you don't have whatever disease was keeping you down that led to this ostomy in many cases.
Yeah.
And that may be one of the best parts of my job, honestly.
That's so cool. So I have 3 experience. I take communion to the sick at the hospital in our parish. And so one of the times that I was doing this, 3 times I've had ostomy patients, but one of the times in particular, it was this woman who was in her 80s, Paul, and her husband was there with her. And I walk in and she's just bawling. So I'm just there as pastoral ministry, and she is just bawling. And her husband says, "Thank God you're here." She is so upset about having an ostomy, and they have all kinds of problems. So it's not like I'm going to see any ostomy patients. This is just random. So she just got an ostomy, and she can't understand how her husband will continue loving her with it, and how anyone is going to accept it, and how she's ever going to be able to leave her house. And she was bawling, and she looks at me and she was like, "I don't know what to do. I don't even want to leave the hospital." And I lifted up my shirt, man, and I showed her, and I said, "Well, you're in luck, because I've had mine for over 10 years, and I was single, and your husband obviously loves you." And so I got to, in doing that, it was therapeutic for me, but it was so liberating to her and to her husband to just no longer be alone in that moment. And that's what's liberating, is like, you're like, oh my goodness, there's someone else. Like, because most times until you meet somebody with it, you may not, until it's like obvious, you're just not going to notice, because it is not noticeable. So that's really cool. That's exciting that you get to see people pretty regular like that. That's huge.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a job. Part of my job, I guess, I probably take for granted maybe more than I should. It's, we complain about how busy we are right now, medically, just COVID's this terrible thing that's happening to the world. And but those are the days that I really have joy for and I'm blessed to have the opportunity. You remind me of the blessing it is to be able to share those moments with people, because so many people shared those moments with me. Yeah. When I was young, like you, I was young and single, and first I was in high school and I first had my ostomy, and then I had an ileal pouch, didn't work out so well. And then in college, I was like a junior in college, and so insecure and so terrified, and have spent chunks of the time I've had an ostomy single, and always worried about what people would think. And I've been blessed to, I'm married to this truly amazing individual now who, we both have talked to people about this, and you're right. People think their lives are over. I've heard it 100 times.
Right.
It is truly a blessing. And I've been really blown away by, I didn't join Instagram until that maybe a year or so, 2 years ago, probably not even. And I was blown away by the ostomy community that exists online. I was telling the patient today about it, that there's people with TPN who've run marathons, and there's people with ostomies that are so supportive. You'll learn more from them than we can ever teach you as medical personnel or physicians, because these people have lived it for years. And social media, people complain about the things that it maybe doesn't do well for the world, but there's amazing things it does for the world.
Oh yeah.
Ostomy community and things like you're doing right here change people's lives in ways you can't imagine, I believe. And
the reason I even started doing this podcast was because for you, just like you said, when I ask you, you have to think for a minute because it is so natural, those experiences with those patients. And it's like, my goodness. But the reason I even started this is because a lot of times, I mean, you're incredibly unique. Most of these patients aren't running into a physician with an ostomy or who's even been through. They might have had patients with it, but it's a whole other ball game. The experience of it, living with it, and having the education of it and how to.
Oh yeah.
Like I think of like the reps from the Hollisters and the Coloplasts, their product knowledge on the issue. And then that's even a little further with like your nursing. Then you have your surgeons, and then you have your patients. But it's all a little bit deeper level of knowledge. And you probably just, I don't even see it. That's why I wanted to, when I started thinking about it, I was like, I have these conversations with people all the time. Yeah. We need to start recording them because there's so many of us that are tired of listening to a talk, and we're tired of reading this thing on Google about Crohn's or colitis or ostomies. And we'll listen to someone talk about living with it and dealing with it. And we'll check into that, and we'll get so much more out of that than anything else. And it's also really good for me because it reminds me, just like you said, that, man, I mean, I talk to people who are suffering. I mean, they're grinding it out like your patients, and you're just like, I mean, it breaks your heart when you can empathize with somebody and really, really be there. I mean, that's a game changer. And that's why I love doing this podcast, is just because the listeners and the feedback I get is always, thank you. I don't know anybody in my community with one of these. Oh. Finally, somebody who can speak honestly about this, or this. And that's why I really kind of wanted to do this and begin these conversations, was just put it out there, let people begin to realize so many of us are managing this, and that online community is incredible, that you might think it's not possible, but just look, okay? And looking will inspire you.
It does.
Just looking around.
I'm blown away.
Okay, so you said you had your ostomy for about 30 years. When did you get it, and what caused it?
So, it was interesting. I was 15 years old and it had a very normal, benign childhood. I grew up in different places, Kansas, Chicago, but I was living in Chicago with my family, and I was a freshman in high school, playing high school soccer and high school basketball. And over Christmas break of my freshman year of high school, I got strep throat, and I took erythromycin for the strep throat. They prescribed it for me. And within a few days of taking it, I started to get stomach pains, and I started to notice this blood in my stool when I went to the bathroom, which I'd never seen before in my life. I'd never even seen a hospital in my life for anything. I'd never broken a bone. I'd never been to the emergency room. And so I noticed this blood, and it keeps coming. I'm going to the bathroom a lot of times, and the doctor kind of like, oh, erythromycin does that, but I was like, no, this isn't normal. And my mom said, no, this isn't normal. And so they took me in, and they said, oh, we need to do some tests. And I had no idea what tests meant, like I do now, right? I mean, so they do the scope, and I thought to myself, oh my God, this is unbelievable that they do this to people. And this is before they gave you propofol and sedated you, right? You just laid on the table, and if you move, they're like, well, just hold still so I can get my procedure done. It was like you were like not even a person, you're like a job to be done or an assembly line to be assembled. And I began to realize doctors are not very nice people. And then they did the barium enema, and they're putting this tube inside of you and telling you to hold still and keep the stuff in and lay on this hard table for 2 hours. And, I'm in tears by the time they're done. And they're just like, God, you are messing our test up. And I'm thinking to myself, wait, isn't this supposed to be where people take care of people? Yeah. And so I got my diagnosis. They said, it's funny. I remember I went to the doctor, and the guy said, you have ulcerative colitis. And I thought, okay, whatever that means. And he said, you're going to come into the hospital and you're not going to eat for 6 weeks. And I said, that's not happening. I said, I have a basketball game next week. I'm going home and I'm playing basketball. And he said, no, you're not. You're coming to the hospital, and we're gonna put IVs in you, and we're gonna feed you through an IV, and you're gonna be in the hospital for 4 to 6 weeks. And then that led to discovering what it means to be a hard stick and getting stuck 7 or 8 times that night for an IV, which people take for granted, which I think is one of the most patients. And all the things. And my disease was one that just kept progressing. I kept bleeding, got 42 units of blood over the next few weeks, got ultimately emergently ambulanced to University of Chicago, which ironically is where I ultimately went to medical school and residency and fellowship, to all my training where I was a patient, and spent the better part of that year, basically my whole rest of my freshman year of high school, and a good part of my sophomore year in that hospital.
Oh, wow.
Colon finally perforated later that year, and they ended up emergently taking me to surgery. I ended up in the ICU, and so then I, over the next year, had the 2 more surgeries for the ileal pouch, which unfortunately didn't go well. I was the first male to have it. Males are tough to do. Our pelvises are small, and back then the surgery was tough, and it strictured and fistulized over the next few years. But that was how it all started. It was sort of the typical, often heard IBD story. Mine, in a blessing sort of way, progressed quickly, and I didn't live for years and years with a disease like that just, kept relapsing and unrelenting and destroying people's lives, like some people do. But mine was one that just was really sick and never got better.
Yeah.
And so in some ways I'm thankful for that, because I don't know, it sounds like you had yours for a while, and I talked to a lot of patients who have theirs for many years, and it just keeps coming back and destroying their life over and over again before they finally have surgeries. So many of them do, at least.
All right. So in regards to mentioning about your docs and what they were saying and all that stuff, I just wanted to follow back up with that, because whether it's intentional or not, now that I'm a businessman, I'm older, I've been through this, I've had this stuff since I was a kid, I kind of am getting a much better understanding of how a lot of this works. And here's the way that I kind of see, from a business standpoint, this whole situation. So like, give it any business, doesn't matter what it is. So I'm a financial advisor. The way I do business, I'm a holistic financial planner. And all I mean by that is that it's kind of like a doc who's adding nutrition, and they're adding all the other important things to your exams. So now it's not just, I'm looking at your finances, I'm looking at where you're spending it, where all the money's going, how that's affected, how you're all that stuff. So there's one way of doing that. You can call yourself a financial advisor. There are many advisors out there. There's lots of them, just like there's many doctors, okay? And there are guys that are super duper duper successful, who you could go to anybody and say, hey, who should I go to? And they'll say the guy they go to, okay? So whoever it is. But there are people, just like an auto body shop or wherever, that just run a shop, and that's what they're selling. There's annuity guys. There's guys that just sell it. You go into their shop, you might need financial planning. You don't realize you're going to a financial planner who only sells annuities, or that only sells this particular product, and they basically fit your situation in their model, and then boom. And so it's basically all they know. They're just trying to fit everyone into the same model. So you can either go to a place where they're running a business and it's just a business, but there's other levels of it. So you'll have docs that will ask different questions, that run their practice a little bit differently, that have PAs on staff and nurses and nutritionists. It's not saying that one is really bad. I'm just saying that you can go to a bad advisor, just like you can go to a bad doctor, and they can have really good bed manner and speak very confidently to where you can trust them. Just like that doc saying 6 weeks. And he, from what he experienced and from the advice he was given and the resources he had, maybe that was the best advice he could give you.
Yep.
But you can be wrong too. And that happens in regards to, you need to get a resection, you need to get on these drugs. That's why I always like to hit back on, we're the CEO of our own medical world, of our own health. And we've got to be able to manage this with our doctors, not against them, and not without them, letting them just make all the decisions. So how do you, even from when you were a kid, how do you feel like living a healthy life, trying to keep your body as well maintained as you can, managing it well? How do you think that did in regards to working with your doctors and helping you make the decisions you made? And I ask that because, like, in my world, I just went to the doctors and I ate however I wanted. I lived however I wanted. I drank like crazy. I didn't get rest. I just didn't take care of myself. And once I started working together as an adult, it was awesome. But I'm asking, how have you noticed the complementary effect of those in your life personally?
It's huge. Yeah, when I was a kid, I didn't know anything from anything. I mean, I suppose I played sports, but I didn't know anything about nutrition. I didn't know anything about anything.
The food pyramid, remember?
Yeah, I lost, as you can imagine, as all of us do. When I was sick, I lost a ton of weight. I went from 160 pounds to 95 pounds, and I couldn't even walk down the basketball court, much less get the ball to the rim by the time I got out of the hospital, which is, it took months for that to come back. And when I had surgeries going forward, even in college, the same thing. In college, I probably exercised less and drank more, and I had complications after those surgeries that I had in college to get my ostomy. And I had a couple of surgeries in college for bowel obstructions and stuff. And, I had a life-changing event because of one of my surgeries. I have to admit, I was working up at the Mayo Clinic doing research on pouchitis of the ileal pouch. I was doing IBD research of the GI and colorectal surgeons at the Mayo Clinic during college in the summers. And over that summer, I had surgery with the guy that I worked for because my pouch was strictured, and I had a stricture above it actually, and they had to take it out. And then, he said to me, he's like, "You're getting a little on the overweight side. You should run like I do. It'd be good for you."
Yeah.
So I started running and started trying to eat better. I had some roommates, actually, ironically, when I lived in Minnesota, that taught me a lot about eating well. That's sort of where my nutrition interest. I was already doing some nutrition-like research in that science, but I learned a lot those summers. And so I ended up running all of my senior year of high school or college, sorry. And I ended up before medical school. He hadn't taken my ileal pouch out. It was sitting in there, and it kept getting infected. And I said, "I can't go to medical school with this pouch in there, even though it's not connected anymore." I said, "You have to take it out." And he's like, "No way. You'll never have children. You'll be sterile. You're likely to be impotent. This is not a surgery you want to have." Yeah. And I said, "No, I can't live this way." I said, "I'll never be able to get through medical school like this." And so he said, "Well, you've got a sperm bank and you've got to sign a consent with a 70% risk of never having children." And because he's like, "Your abdomen's a disaster. I was just operating on you last summer and a year ago, and there's just no way this is safe." But I said, "You know what, you have to do it." But in that year, I ran every day, didn't know that would matter. And so I had surgery, it was supposed to take 8 hours. And I woke up at about 11 a.m., was only in there for 4 hours. And I thought to myself, I looked at the clock, did they even do the surgery? Maybe they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And he comes in, he's like, Paul, I don't know what you've been doing for the last year of your life, but whatever it is, it took your abdomen that was a disaster a year ago, and it looked like you've never had surgery before. He's like, I could see everything. I did exactly what I needed to do. You're not going to have any complications.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, don't ever stop. Whatever it was you did, change your life. And that's the only reason I have kids now. And that's, I mean, it saved my life doing that.
That's awesome.
And I've never stopped since.
How many kids do you have?
I have 3.
You do?
3 boys.
Cool.
Yeah.
How old are they?
They are, God, why do I have to think? 10.
You're on the spot.
14 and 16. I'm getting old. 10, 14, and 16.
That's awesome.
Yeah. God, they are getting old. But I was really lucky. And then, in medical school, I got a little obsessed and joined a track club, a lot of older guys who were professional runners and ran marathons at my weight. And then I didn't like the gym at University of Chicago because it wasn't air conditioned. It was too hot for me. And so I became a personal trainer to work out at a gym I couldn't afford, and ended up getting into a gym with professional bodybuilders who taught me more about nutrition and exercise and supplementing than I would ever learn in medical school by a long shot.
Yeah.
And that really set me on my course. And then my research ended up being nutrition, and my life ended up being nutrition and exercise, because I realized when I take better care of myself, when these surgeries come, I get better faster. I don't have complications, and I can be back to work in a week, 2-3 weeks, where before I would knock me out for 6 months.
Yeah.
It changed my life, and I'll never stop. I mean, it doesn't stop you from having bowel obstructions ultimately, or having the potential to have surgery again. But when you have it, you're ready.
Yeah.
And there's data for that now. Now we know people that come in with, healthier muscle, more muscle mass, and who are more fit and who have better nutritional status. Of course, they have much better outcomes from surgery. They do much better long-term. They get less infections. There's lots of advantages for people like us. And now it's my life teaching that and practicing that in my practice and my research.
What kind of, have you had many product, appliance, skin problems along the way? I mean, 30 years is a long time in regards to, using the same stuff? Have you had any, like I started my first, when I got out of the hospital, it was Hollister's, whatever it was, their tape border product. I loved it. It was amazing for maybe 7 or 8 years. And then I just started getting really bad skin infections, like a folliculitis, and some other issues. So I had to stop using that and switch it up and go to something else they had. But I guess I'm curious, have you had any skin issues, infections around your stoma, things like that over the years that you've had to change or make adjustments?
Yeah, for most of my life, I used Coloplast. I used the Durahesive.
Yeah.
It was so great, especially when I was running a lot, and even in the gym. It was really hardy and resistant to that kind of heat and exercise. And I surf and do other things in the ocean, and it really stood up well to that. And then after my surgeries in 2014, that's when I had my last surgeries, my stoma and my abdomen changed some. I ended up, having my abdomen be open for a little bit. It just changed my abdomen a lot. And I ended up not having it seal well. And I didn't love if the people from Common Deck are listening, I didn't love the pouches. I felt like the smell from the ostomy output was permeating them quickly.
Yeah.
I felt like it changed the material they were making them from. Yeah. And I still would have liked to stay with the Durahesive in all honesty, but I didn't love the pouches as much, which is crazy. I felt like they changed over the years.
Yeah.
And so I ended up seeing on Instagram, a lot of people like the Coloplast pouches.
Yeah.
And I really thought the closure was really neat, and the fact you can fold it up, and I thought it was a great pouch. And so I switched to it. In the Coloplast wafer, I don't like it as much, honestly, as the Durahesive wafer, but the pouch I like infinitely better.
Yeah.
And so I've switched to Coloplast probably in the last 2 years. Okay. And it does very well, but the pouches are so much better that I can't imagine going back, even though I like the Durahesive material a little better and the tape border a little better. They have their pluses and minuses, and I think, both are good products. I've used a lot. I've used Hollister too. I've used them all.
Yeah.
I tried the kangaroo pouches for a while back. I had surgeries in 2003, and I had a major ulceration under my stoma after that surgery, and had a lot of trouble after that, and in 2014 as well. And in 2014, actually, at those surgeries, I used the kangaroo pouches for a while. Maybe that was the surgery I used them with. And they were good too, but they're one pieces. I don't like one pieces so much for day-to-day life.
Me neither.
They're all pretty good, but I'm using the Coloplast stuff now.
Do you use that gray one that they have?
Yeah.
So
yeah, the gray pouch.
Quick observation.
Yeah.
Like I love the Hollister. I use Coloplast now. I made the transition to this particular Coloplast product.
Yeah.
About 2 years ago or so, and I like it. There's things I don't like, but one thing I was going to bring up is how obviously transparent those gray bags are when you jump in a pool or a shower or whatever, or when they get wet. Have you noticed that about those, as opposed, because you've used Hollisters are like the bomb. I wish they'd all come together and combined.
There's good things. Every manufacturer has like their strengths.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know they're all so different. And I mean, like if you could take the tape border on the Durahesive in the shape of the Coloplast with the pouch of there's like, they're all different.
Can you tell that the Coloplast vents air really? What is it like? I've noticed that the Coloplast vents air way better than any of the other two companies I think they vent really well, way better than Hollister. Like I would wake up in the middle of the night with a full gassy bag with my Hollister bags. And since I've had these Coloplast ones, it might've been 2 or 3 times in 2 years that I'm like, my goodness.
I agree. They've done a better job of putting that together and making that work. I think so too.
And something really little, like that little Velcro piece where you can just flip it up.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of the pouch.
It's huge. It's a game changer. So when you see things like that, I think to myself, do these other companies not have ostomates on there that work for them? You got to be getting some feedback here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a nice advance. And, even the little things like they put the little plastic bags to put the pouches in after you change them in the box. I wish they put 10 in there, but at least they put some. That's
Yeah.
huge. You don't have to worry about having a bag with you to put it in. Those little things are really nice. And I think each company could learn something from the others and continue to make better and better products.
I've been trying to raise a little bit of hell, Paul, with Coloplast with the fact that they only give you 5 trash bags with I'm just like, what in the world is wrong with you? And so I call, and the first person I talk to, they're giving, like, I'm getting a little bit of the 3rd degree tone, and I'm recognizing it, thinking I'm the one in the wrong, asking for more. And I'm trying to figure out what's the deal here. And their position is environmentally friendly. And so they were saying they don't want to waste so many trash bags and give you a trash bag for every pouch or whatever. I'm like, these are 2 pieces.
We're going to use them again?
What else do you have? I got dogs. I got children. What do you want me to do with this stuff? And they literally said it's their environmental awareness. And I didn't respond this, but this is the truth, Paul. We should do a little bit of research, and that's either, how much of the environment is hurt, I'm sure, from the production of those plastic products and ostomy products in general. The last place you want to start cutting for environmental problems is going to be my peace of mind and sanity as the patient. Like,
because we're going to put it in some plastic bag. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's nice that you give us a nice sealed one that doesn't, otherwise I'm using a Target bag, but yours is way better because yours seals and it doesn't leak and it doesn't have a smell and it doesn't.
Yeah.
I know. I don't understand that. I'm not buying the environmental thing.
And the other thing is, like, I don't know if there's a patent or something on the tape border part, but I wish that there was tape border at Coloplast, because, like, anyone will tell you, Hollister will tell you, because they know they've mastered this part of it, is that the initial appliance, the flange itself, the rubbery part, is what needs to have a good seal to prevent leaks. Right. The tape border is what helps the weight. It's what helps keep the thing strong to your skin, regardless of if there's output in it or not. And so you need the seal, and then you need the weight piece, because some people just don't have tons of, like, you don't go normal. It's not like you go to the bathroom like someone normal. It's a little bit over a period of time. And that weight begins to pull on this thing and loosen it. Even if it's a little bit, it's something. So.
And when it's hot, and moving from Colorado, I moved to North Carolina about 4 years ago to work at Duke from Colorado, and it is so humid here and hot in the summers. And that thing, those wax borders melt off and start to peel down.
Yep, they do.
And the tape borders don't do that. And so even if it was just hot, they peel off. But when you're exercising and it's hot, or you're in the ocean a lot and it's hot, they don't hold up like a tape border does.
That's right. Not at all. They just don't.
And so, it's a good material, but I wish they had it all with tape around it instead of all that wax material.
It's got to be a patent thing. I'd say that's my only guess.
Yeah.
And then I'd hope they'd get back on board with that as soon as that 17 years or 20 years is up, or whatever it is.
And I use Coloplast little half moon.
Yeah.
Adhesive things. Those are nice. Like we were surfing this summer a couple of days, and I felt very confident. I wear a belt every day on my appliance. 24/7. And with that adhesive thing, and then the belt, I felt really good. That adhesive thing's nice, but the tape's better.
Do you use those what's it called, Austin? Stealth belt, like something like that?
I haven't. My wife keeps asking me why I don't, but I haven't, because the belts that secure the pouches, if I make them nice and tight, I've never had it be a problem.
Yeah.
And so I've never felt the need to use one of those other belts, because the belt that I wear 24/7 anyway seems to do the job.
And it's like something else, like, to me, it's something else to do. Like, I've got my routine, and this is good. I don't I don't need something else to put on to worry about that's going to add a little bit more heat or moisture possibly. And since what I'm doing is doable, I don't feel like I need to add some more security, then I won't do it.
Yeah, it's just another layer of stuff.
Yeah.
I haven't felt them yet. I know people will use them. I've known people who've used them that love them, but I've never seen the need.
Do you have one or two go-to like hacks or accessories that you do use regular besides like the belt that you have on that you're talking about just like the normal
whatever company's belt fits that,
product.
belts only fit Coloplast pouches and, everybody's belts used only fit their pouches, but so whatever pouch I'm wearing, I wear their belt. But, I use those rings. I use the Hollister rings. I think Hollister makes the best little wax ring. And what I do with the Coloplast wafer is I cut it. And, I use the indented, like the convex Coloplast wafer, but I cut a circle around that Hollister ring, and I stick the Hollister ring in on the bottom, and I stretch it out around the stoma. And then I take two of the pieces. I take the two half circles. I take the circle I cut out from making the whole thing, I make it smaller. And I take those two half circles, I cut it in half, and I put one on each side of that convex part. Yeah. And so that gives me this other layer of sort of suction and stick on the side so that it can't leak to the side. I've used those rings forever. I love those rings. And then I paste the bottom of the ring, and I paste inside around the stoma to try to get more wear time out of it. So I use a lot of paste and a lot of those rings. Have you
ever heard of the Secure Press?
No, what's that?
Secure Press. It's just a product by a company called Stomagenics, and it's basically, I don't want to run upstairs and grab it, but it's think of like a whiskey barrel shape, but it's small to the size of your stoma. So you'll measure your stoma, you'd order it to size, and it would be just larger than that. Yeah. And it's think of like a whiskey barrel. It would go after you've put your flange on. Yeah. And you've done your thing, and you know how you want to press on it to get a good seal. It goes right around your stoma.
Oh yeah.
And presses down, and then you can push this little thing down on that area right around the stoma.
That's cool.
To get a really good seal on it. Yeah. And it's awesome because what I do is I have to run my finger on it, right? Yeah. So you run your finger over it, create heat, and you're just doing that over and over and over and over. Well, this allows you to just put it on and hold it. Like I'll stand against a wall or against a door frame, and I'll have that pressed against the door frame. That's and cool. Hold the outsides. But it's a way to hyper focus. And I've gotten 24 extra hours out of my Coloplast because it's sealing so well. And I'm realizing even after 2 and 3 days, 4 days maybe of wearing, that even when I take it off, the seal around there is so good with this.
Yeah, it's not leaking under.
Not at all. I'm still having to really peel it off.
That's awesome.
And so if you haven't heard of it, it's called the Secure Press. Check it out. It's pretty dope. They have another, like they have a deal that you would put it over. Do you have an ileostomy? You have a
Jejunostomy. It's like, it looks like an ileostomy. It's just more, the ileum got removed when I lost my pouch. So but it looks the same as an ileostomy would look.
Okay. So they have these deals that are almost like a reverse tampon, where it's a cylinder with an absorbent material on the inside of it that goes around your stoma. Mm-hmm. So it actually goes around your stoma for when you have output. You put the Secure Press down over that. So if while you're sitting there for those 2 minutes, you have any output, it goes.
That's a nightmare.
Right. It goes into their stoma genie, which is what catches your output. And those are disposable. And you just throw that out. But they have products to make this whole system work. It's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. I have never seen that. That's awesome. Because that is a nightmare, right? When that thing's, like if I have to change it at night, which sometimes I don't think, I sort of put it off till I go to bed, it's inevitably active at night because whatever you ate for lunch is coming out of you.
Yeah.
That is a nightmare. And sometimes when it's liquidy, it'll spray.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's a nightmare. It'll hit the wall. I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
It is really cool, and it's a total two-piece system thing, and you can get them separate or together, but it's really neat. The way it'll catch, and they're size perfect specifically to you. You give them your size, and it's all covered by insurance. It's all covered by Medicare. It's all
so like the medical supply companies sell it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Like you can order them. Yep, you bet. I only have a couple more questions for you, and I just wanted to get a little bit of a feel for if you got to have a story or two of some bloopers or something that's happened. I mean, I give talks, I travel around and speak in front of groups of people for what I do for a living. I've ripped the thing off walking into the door because it caught onto the handle, those open handles that just don't, and it caught onto that and ripped off. I've had a number of problems, and you got to have 1 or 20 as well. Yeah. But give me one good one. What was one of the most recent ones, if anything?
So two jump into mind. I don't know how recent they were. I'm sure something's happened recently I'm not thinking of, but some of the ones that stick out. When I was I started, before I did critical care and anesthesiology, which is what my residency was in, I was a peds resident at University of Colorado for a year. And we went to a Broncos game. And during the Broncos game, the clip came off of the pouch.
Oh, shit.
And I'm in these sort of real light blue jeans, like way lighter than they should have been probably. And that thing leaks. And you're in the middle of Mile High, old stadium, 65,000 people. And I didn't know what to do. And so I went into the bathroom and literally I was in my underwear. I took my pants off and I just washed them in the sink. Hundreds of people around me had no idea what I was doing. Thought I was crazy.
Oh my gosh.
It was like halftime and I had to wear them the rest of the game. It was cold out. But I didn't know what else to do. And the other one that jumps to mind is my wife and I, when we were dating, this wasn't so many years ago, we were in San Francisco and we went to Sausalito, right? In Sausalito, if you've ever been there, you take a ferry boat from San Francisco where your hotel room is over to this island, over this other side. And, we'd probably been dating, I don't know, 6-8 months. And again, I had a clip and the clip came off and disappeared. And so I had this pouch with no clip. And a ferry boat ride and 15-minute car ride away from anything to fix it. And I didn't know what to do. I had nothing. And so, I tried it the best I could with a rubber band and rolling it up, but it was terrifying. It was everywhere.
So frustrating.
Those are two of the worst ones I can think of. I know I've had it. I know I've had it cut loose and leak and do bad stuff in the hospital from time to time through my life, but that's easier, right? I work in a hospital where I can go raid the storage closet and find ostomy stuff, and I can make anybody's product work for a day. And so when it happens in the hospital at work, unlike most people's work, and I always carry stuff with me in that sense. But when you're going to a game or when you're going to a ferry boat ride, you don't have stuff with you all the time. I know some people do that, but I think the only other ones that come to mind is I travel a lot and fly a lot when we could do that for my research, and I speak a lot of medical meetings, and I've had them come off on international plane flights where the thing comes open and you're on a plane. Yeah. And you're like, you always have stuff with you, but it's really not ideal.
Right. It's so nerve wracking when it happens.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I was on a plane once and I was changing so I had a lot of output, but I thought it was air.
Oh no. Yeah.
Right. I thought it was like half output, half air. I was on a plane. I go into the bathroom with my two-piece and I go to burp it a little bit and it just
goes everywhere.
I mean, I didn't cry, but I could have cried if I wasn't so panicked about trying to get that smell taken care of, trying to get this all cleaned up, trying to get my shirt off and my pants cleaned before too much time has passed and they start knocking on the door. I'm like, oh my goodness. But I've had a number of stories like when you've had it for a while, you get a little bit more courageous in situations sometimes, and so you kind of think, no, I'm good, and you might not be.
I always, on every plane flight, no matter where, how long or how short, I always have a second pair of clothes in my carry-on. Always.
Yeah. I've
got burned one too many times not having that other pair of clothes to put on when it goes bad.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's good advice. I mean, I'm sure people told me to do that and I didn't do it until I learned a bad lesson.
Yeah, I like to think of it. Just because I have young kids, I've got a 7-year-old on down. I've got 4 children under 7, almost to 8, under 8. And it's like going somewhere with the youngest, where we don't go anywhere with our babies without an extra onesie and an extra diaper and wipes and all that stuff. You don't do it because accidents happen anywhere. And I had my ostomy before I met my wife, but having kids kind of revealed to me it's just a natural thought, because I have a little kit everywhere. Like I take something everywhere I go, and I leave stuff at work. I leave stuff at this friend's house and that person's house and so on. But
be prepared. You can't say it enough.
Yeah, and it'll catch you off guard. It's usually at like, at Arrowhead Stadium when I'm at a Chiefs game, or like when I was at the Royals game and I had, I was trying to drain it and the thing flipped it. It was so quick. It just unfolded so fast. I was trying to do, and it just got all over my socks and my shoes. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I missed those World Series playoffs. And I had to go out to the car because that's where I had my change of clothes and everything. And I was able to get back in, but that habit of taking stuff with you that's a good habit.
It's a good habit, and you just never know. The Velcro clips are a huge godsend. For many years, and you probably experienced, they had plastic clips.
Yeah.
Those things, the thing could come loose of them, or they could just come off.
Yes.
And that was a nightmare. I would never go back to a clipped pouch.
Yeah,
that's the root of many of my issues.
Even, I don't know if it was because of patent problems, which it probably was. Like the Hollisters, they graduated to that other option where it was you could press it together, but it wasn't like Velcro. It was these little balls that kind of firmed together like Velcro, and even those you can get them off, and like they're not on right. They're not. It isn't like a really strong Velcro, but yeah, man, design on these things. That's why so many times I'm like, do they even have somebody with an ostomy using this stuff regular? Or do they have such a glorified business environment where they aren't allowing criticism? Because someone needs to go, all right, Coloplast, we're doing 1 trash bag per ostomy bag for every box. It is worth it to us. Our customers are going to Amazon and dog poop bag companies to get these things. Why the world are we making them do that? Like, somebody needs to bring it up.
Diaper genie. When the kids were little, right, we had diaper. You probably have them now. You had diaper genies, right?
Yeah.
I always said to myself, that would be the perfect thing for these pouches. Why don't I get one of those again? I should have kept one of the kids. Diaper genie, use that, but I never think to get one. But that always seemed like a good idea to me.
And I tried, I'll give you my own. I tried that with my kids and having them, and the same. It happens with diapers and it happens with ostomies.
Yeah.
Eventually, those things, even with your kids' poopy diapers, they start to reek, even when they're closed up. And I know the technology's changed and they have a new model and stuff. Yeah. But even 3 years ago when we were using them, it was.
That's recent.
It was like. You can still smell it. The best way to handle dirty diapers was to take your dirty diaper and take it out to the garage in the trash can, to the trash can in the garage.
It's true.
Yeah, and so like with the way that I've been able to keep the smell from that stuff, I just keep it in a trash bag, and every 2 days I just take the trash bag with me as I go to the car, and I throw it out. But because otherwise it's the smell, and it gets on everything. It doesn't matter what it is. So. Anyway,
do you have
any other little accessories or hacks that are just game changers? Do you have a travel bag you take with you that?
Always.
Okay.
Yeah, I got one of those Convitec sample bags.
Yeah.
Those blue ones years back. I probably had it for a lot of years. I wish they'd send me a new one because it's falling apart. But I take that thing everywhere. Every time I'm in the hospital, every time I'm on call, I always have that with wafers and little scissors. And I got a little curved scissors from the hospital from one of our suture removal kits so I can take it on airplanes because it doesn't have a point.
Yeah.
And I always have, paste and pouches and everything I would ever need, at least a couple of them. And I take that everywhere, of course, like you were saying. Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing that it took me quite a while to learn that I don't think anybody teaches us when we get our ostomies, especially if we have ileostomies, we don't have a colon anymore, is what I said at the beginning, is you can't really hydrate yourself drinking water. And when it's hot, you will get burned. And I learned this fishing with my dad. I was probably 16, 17 years old. We were fishing up in Canada and we hiked into a lake to fish. And we were carrying a canoe and it was like 95 degrees. We just brought a bunch of water with us. And I ended up with the worst headache of my life. Ended up in the hospital that night in this little sort of native Canadian reservation hospital. And the guy was a genius. And he said to me, he said, why were you drinking water? Why weren't you drinking beer? Because he goes, you with your intestinal situation, water just disturbs your sodium and dehydrates you more. And, because our colons absorb salt.
Right.
And now we don't have that. And so one of the things I think we're bad at teaching patients is when it's hot and you're out doing stuff, water is going to get you in trouble. It's going to derange your electrolytes. You're going to feel terrible. You're going to get cramps. You're going to end up feeling nauseated. You're going to have headaches, and it's dangerous. Yeah. And so, I use all kinds of different hydration things. There's drip drops, but I drink a lot of Gatorade Zero. I found it's good. There's too much sugar in regular Gatorade, even G2 for us. It runs right through us. But I use a lot of Gatorade Zero. I use a lot of different electrolyte preparations. And I think that's something we don't do a very good job of teaching people. And then I guess the other thing that I feel like we as a medical community do poorly for people with ostomies is we don't warn them that there's foods they're going to eat that could obstruct them and that they should avoid. No more mushrooms, no more beans, no more really uncooked raw vegetables in any large amount, no more baby carrots, apples. I've lost 40 centimeters of my intestine to an apple that I ate one time when I was younger. And you might eat it one time and it's the next time it gets you. The last time I had surgery, it was quinoa. I'd eaten quinoa before, but I didn't eat a lot of it. And this time, the time that I can know that it happened, I had a bunch. Obstructed me and they spent 8 hours pulling quinoa out of my gut, almost cost me my life, much less anything else. So there's just things that we can't eat and nobody really is good at telling us that. And so I've had a lot of patients come in. I've had people come in and end up spending a year in the hospital with fistulas and complications because they were eating mushrooms in their spaghetti sauce and they got multiple obstructions, never tied the two together. No one ever told them. I had a guy, really, really high level executive guy that I took care of. He and his wife never were told, they never put that together. And I was talking to him about mushrooms and they said, well, that's always what we ate before you got sick. We never put it together. It nearly cost this guy his life. I mean, he was in the hospital for months.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so, it's funny. I was glad to see you'd written a book. I feel like there's some subtle things that maybe the ostomy companies could even help us. Somebody should, that should be fundamental things that all ostomates receive.
Yeah.
About hydration and diet and bowel obstruction risk and the foods that can perpetrate that and how to keep yourself hydrated, that I don't think we do a very good job of teaching people, and people suffer major consequences because of it.
All right. So you sparked something in me. So hang on. This is a project I'm working on.
Yeah.
And now that you say it, I want you to get super excited and go, I want to help with that.
Yeah.
All right. So these are ostomate bags. These are patient bags that I'm putting together to send to. They're going to 5 hospitals right now in Kansas and Missouri and Oklahoma, and I'm trying to distribute 4,000 of these throughout the month of throughout the year of 2021. And so all these is my way of trying to introduce the social media ostomy community to the patients, but also introducing them into a way to manage their life. So it'll have a copy of my book in it. It's going to have like the Phoenix Magazine, their new patient guide. So it'll have that in it. It's going to have a welcome letter from me. It'll have a bunch of, so I have a whole bunch of these back there, but like with the stealth belt, it'll have ads for stealth belt, for like the secure press, for all these little inventions, how to get hooked up with the United Ostomy Association of America, Coloplast sales reps, Hollister's sales reps, how to get a hold of them so they can get products mailed to them, all the ostomy support groups in the country, state by state, and a number of, I wanted to have like a quick tips guide, which was going to be exactly what you're talking about, which I'm only halfway done kind of putting together, which is the go-to hacks, the kind of things just like that everybody needs to be thinking about in regards to hydration, little things, maybe it's intermittent fasting, things like that, tons of the importance of sleep, a number of little things that are really good for ostomates to just keep in mind, so that now, right when they get not out of surgery, out of the hospital, these are gifts from their doctors. So they're going to be given to them on their follow-up appointment, preferably when they come back. But how they do it, it kind of depends, but that's how these are going to be given out. But that way the patient can get them and get into the life and understand and meet people like you, find podcasts, learn about other people that are doing this stuff. And now they can kind of manage their life going forward a little bit better, because like it took me, I've only been involved with the social media community for maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
Maybe. And I've had my ostomy for 16 years.
Yeah.
And so it's like, my goodness. And I didn't meet the one person with another ostomy until like 2 years after my surgery. So that's what I'm trying to hopefully bridge that gap, is helping these patients right out the gate get introduced to other people that have them, the people they need to call when they have problems, and learn very fast that they can go online and see other people dealing with this stuff and learn about issues that they're having. And that's a so much better way to educate yourself on top of your experience and learning from your doctors. So that's one little thing that I'm working on.
I love it. No, I'd love to help. I mean, I think that's something we've really needed to do for our fellow ostomates that are new, because it's just, this should not be something, I mean, ostomy's been around for many, many years. It should not be trial and error for everybody new who gets an ostomy anymore.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I feel like that's how it is. And
right.
I see whole swaths of complications that I kick myself every time. And my wife and I always say there's so many things we wish we had more free time to do. We're both in medicine. She works in the ICU and is an administrator in the hospital too. And we're like, God, if we had another set of days in our life to do stuff, these are things that would be so great to address, because so many people suffer things that are totally preventable.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And all the experiences, you and I and others have had, they're never all in one place. And so by the time people realize they need to learn them, that most of them have already had something bad happen, that they heard these things at the beginning that wouldn't have happened.
That's exactly,
totally preventable.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, the readmittance rate for ostomy patients is a little over 25%, and post-op problems is closer to 70%. And the majority of them are due to management of lifestyle after they're dismissed. And it's that learning curve from home health helping them for 2 weeks to the next 3 to 6 months after, where they're figuring out all this stuff.
Yeah.
And
so, dehydration is one of the most common things we see people back for.
Yeah.
But the other things too, I mean, bowel obstructions, all these things add up and cause troubles.
Yep. And oftentimes people feel really good after their, whatever problem they had before ostomy surgery, after, it's dramatic how much better they feel. And like, as a sick person, even just if my pain could go down by about 40% in a given day, you'd think I was going 100% because I'd feel such relief. And so after your ostomy surgery, you can think you can do way more than you should, and you can push yourself further than you ought. And which also causes, in regards to eating, in regards to maybe weightlifting or whatever, those kinds of things, that can cause obstructions and other readmittance problems. So you're exactly right.
Yeah, there's those tricks to all of it.
Well, Paul, I appreciate you coming on, man. This is awesome. You're a wealth of knowledge, not just on having your ostomy, but also from your education and your practice. So I thank you for your feedback, and I thank you for educating us a little bit.
Of course. Now, my pleasure. The last advice I'll leave with people is, with COVID going on like it is, for those of us, especially who have some of the issues we have, some of the things that we know can help people, or we're learning at least can help people, are make sure your vitamin D is normal. So everybody should be taking some vitamin D, probably 2,000 to 4,000 units of D3 a day. And then probiotics can be really helpful as well, we're finding. And actually, we're running a big trial at Duke that myself and another physician are running in a national way. And so, if you want to be part of the trial, we actually will pay you to collect we give you the probiotics for free, or the studies for free. And then even if you'll send us a little of the stool, we're studying how the microbiome affects people's risk for COVID and how they recover from it and other viruses. We'll pay you for that.
Hook me up. I'll do it. And I'll talk about it on my deals.
Yeah. So we're looking for patients. So what we're looking for in this one particular study, we have others that are going to start soon, is anybody who has a family member who's tested positive is at risk.
Yeah.
So if you have somebody in your family who tests positive, the whole house, down to the kids from 1 year of age up, can be in this study. We'll send stuff out to you for free, and we'll pay you to be in it too as well. And so if people are looking for that, but I think for people who are just trying to stay well, a good probiotic like Lactobacillus GG, and but you can get at the store. Culturelle makes it, other people make it, and they're helping support our study. Thankfully, our research to do this, they're giving us the product for free, and so that's nice of them. But I would encourage people to take that. But if there's anybody who's found out, or recently finds out, or in the near future finds out that somebody in their house is positive, you can look up my Twitter page or my Instagram page. I have links for the study. It's an IRB approved study. We have an FDA IND for this. We think we can help a lot of people, and it's free. And in fact, we'll pay you to get some of your stool samples. Something those of us with ostomies know a lot about getting easily. So. But those two things I think can really help people, and they're pretty simple. You can get them at the store, you can get them at Target. You can do pretty simple stuff to get this.
Have you had COVID? Did you test positive at all?
I have not. And I work in an ICU that has a good number of patients who have it on any given day. But I guess one of the blessings of people always say, oh gosh, it's hard to be a frontline provider taking care of critically ill people with COVID. But the reality is, I know who has it.
Yeah.
And so, we're always careful. And so we have all the PPE we'd ever need. We take extreme precautions. And it probably makes us more, my wife and especially more, and our kids too, more cautious outside the hospital. We're exceedingly cautious.
Sure.
When we see people die of it. And so I've watched, unfortunately, too many people pass away of this really dread disease. And people of IBD, people who have chronic diseases, people on immunosuppressants are at much higher risk for complications. And so we haven't ever had it I think part of it is because we know who has it. We don't work in the emergency room. We don't work in a primary care clinic where who knows who's walking in the door. We're careful with all our patients, and we take extreme precautions, which we know who has it. And so I think actually it's, in some ways, it lets us be super careful.
Yeah. How and where can our listeners find you, Paul? If they want to reach out to you or follow you on your Twitter page, how do they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on all the different social medias. My Instagram is Paul_Wischmeyer, MD. My Twitter is Paul_Wischmeyer, pretty simple. On Facebook, I'm on my name, and most of my posts are public because a lot of them are around nutrition and health things and trying to help people find new research and new ways to take care of themselves. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well, and it's just my name.
Yeah.
So, I'm always happy. My email is my name, paul.wischmeyer, Wischmeyer @duke.edu. And so I send out publications to people, and, there's lots of research around some of the stuff that is going on with us as ostomates and other illnesses. And so I'm always happy to send articles and try to answer people's questions that way too. But Instagram
cool.
and Twitter are great ways to reach out.
Paul, thanks again. And everybody, thanks for listening. I appreciate it. This is really fun. And I hope that not only do you learn from listening to our stories, but you learn from us sharing that it's so important for you, not on this formal platform, but in some way to share your story with someone by you. And that's really just like Paul and I, we learn from each other. I mean, there's things that I've learned just in visiting with him for the last hour that I didn't know prior to this. And I've had my ostomy for 15, 16 years now. So it's nonstop, our learning. And thank you so much for coming on. Thank you everybody for listening. This was really cool. And I look forward to posting it. I'll tag all of your stuff when I post it, so they'll be able to follow you and find you. But everybody have a good day. Thanks for listening.
Yep. Take care, everyone. Thank you.